Arthur lived in a small, blue house with a big, green yard. Every morning, he woke up to the sound of birds chirping outside his window. He'd brush his teeth, comb his hair, and eat a bowl of sugary cereal before heading off to school. Just a normal kid, living a normal life. Nothing exciting ever happened to Arthur. His days were as predictable as the sunrise. He liked it that way. No surprises, no scary monsters, just plain, ordinary Arthur. He loved playing video games, reading comic books, and hanging out with his best friend, Ben. They would build forts in the woods behind Arthur's house and imagine they were brave knights or daring explorers. But even those adventures felt safe and familiar. Arthur liked knowing what to expect. Or so he thought. But this morning was different. The birds were singing their usual song, but something felt off. Arthur stretched and yawned, opening his eyes. He blinked. And blinked again. He wasn't alone. Beside him, in his bed, under his covers, was someone else. Someone who looked exactly like him. The boy had the same messy brown hair, the same small nose, and even the same little gap between his two front teeth. He was sleeping soundly, his chest rising and falling with each breath. Arthur's heart started to pound. Who was this stranger? And why did he have Arthur's face? His first thought was a prank. Maybe Ben was playing a trick on him. But Ben wouldn't be able to make himself look exactly like Arthur. This was too weird. Arthur felt a shiver run down his spine. He wanted to scream, but his voice seemed stuck in his throat. Carefully, he reached out a trembling hand and poked the sleeping boy's shoulder. Nothing. He poked him again, a little harder. Still nothing. The boy slept on, completely undisturbed. Arthur started to feel a little braver. He poked him one more time, even harder, and this time, he added a little shake. Hey! Arthur whispered loudly, wake up. The sleeping boy stirred. His eyelids fluttered, and he slowly opened his eyes. He blinked, just like Arthur had done moments before. Then, his eyes widened, and he sat bolt upright in the bed, staring directly at Arthur. Whoa, the boy exclaimed, his voice sounding almost exactly like Arthur's. Who are you? And why do you look exactly like me? He looked around the room, taking in the blue walls, the race car bedspread, and Arthur's collection of comic books. Where am I? He seemed just as surprised and confused as Arthur felt. The fear in his eyes was definitely real. This wasn't a prank. Something very strange was going on. I should be asking you that. Arthur exclaimed, finally finding his voice. This is my room. My bed. He pointed an accusing finger at the other boy. What's your name? Arthur, the boy replied, looking even more confused. My name is Arthur. And I live at 12, Maple Street. What's going on? Arthur stared. That's my name and address too. This was getting weirder and weirder. They both liked pizza with pepperoni and mushrooms, they both hated spinach, and they both dreamed of flying to the moon. It was like looking in a mirror, except the mirror could talk, and it had somehow ended up in his bed. Maybe, Arthur said slowly, maybe we're dreaming. A really weird dream that we're both having at the same time. It was the only explanation that made even a little bit of sense. The other Arthur considered this. Yeah, he said, maybe. I mean, it would explain a lot. Like, how I ended up in your bed when I went to sleep in my own. He paused. Hey, do you remember Mrs. Gable's class trip to the zoo last year? When the monkey stole Ben's banana? Arthur's eyes widened. Yeah. And it threw the peel at Mr. Peterson. How did you know that? The other Arthur shrugged. I just remember it. Okay, Arthur said, if this is a dream, then we should be able to wake up. He pinched his arm, hard. Ouch, he yelped. Did that work? The other Arthur asked, looking concerned. Nope, Arthur replied, rubbing his arm. Still here. He looked around the room. Okay, another test. If this is a dream, we can do anything we want, right? He tried to make his bed float in the air. He closed his eyes, concentrated really hard, and nothing happened. The bed stayed firmly on the floor. The other Arthur tried to make a comic book fly. He waved his hands over it, chanting, up, and away. But the comic book didn't budge. I guess it's not a dream, he said, sounding disappointed. So, what is it? Arthur studied the other Arthur carefully. He was still so much like him, it was uncanny. But then he noticed something. A tiny, almost invisible scar above the other Arthur's left eyebrow. Arthur didn't have a scar there. Hey, Arthur said, pointing, you have a scar. I don't have that. The other Arthur touched the scar. Oh, yeah, he said. I got that when I fell out of a tree trying to rescue a kitten. You didn't? Arthur shook his head. Nope. I've never fallen out of a tree. He looked closer. And your favorite color is blue, right? Yeah, the other Arthur said. The best color. What's yours? Green, Arthur replied. Definitely green. They were alike, but not exactly the same. Then Arthur noticed something else. On the other Arthur's wrist was a watch. But it wasn't just any watch. It was big and clunky, with strange symbols on its face and glowing buttons. Arthur had never seen anything like it before. What's that? Arthur asked, pointing to the watch. The other Arthur looked down at his wrist. Oh, this, he said. Well, it's kind of hard to explain. He hesitated, then added, it's a long story. Arthur raised an eyebrow. I think we have plenty of time, he said. And I'm pretty sure I can handle anything at this point. The other Arthur took a deep breath. Okay, he said, but you have to promise not to freak out. He fiddled with the watch, his fingers hovering over the glowing buttons. This watch, it's not from around here. He pressed a small, red button. Suddenly, the room flickered. Just for a second, the lights dimmed and then brightened again. Arthur blinked, trying to adjust to the sudden change in light. What was that? He asked, feeling a strange tingling sensation in his arms. The other Arthur looked worried. Oops, he said. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. For a split second, just before the lights returned to normal, Arthur saw something else. A quick flash of tall, gleaming buildings made of metal and glass, flying cars zooming between them, and robots walking down the street. It was a city unlike anything he had ever seen, not even in his favorite science fiction movies. Then it was gone, replaced by his familiar blue bedroom walls. What? What was that? Arthur stammered, his eyes wide with disbelief. He felt like he had just glimpsed another world. A world that was both amazing and terrifying. Where did that come from? That, the other Arthur said, his voice trembling slightly, was a glimpse of my world. Or, at least, one version of it. He took another deep breath. I'm from another dimension. A place where things are different. He explained that in his dimension, there were many different versions of people, all living in slightly different realities. Some Arthurs were astronauts, some were famous chefs, and some were even superheroes. He was just a regular kid, like Arthur, but he had gotten his hands on a dimension-hopping watch. And now, somehow, it had brought him here. So, this watch is like a doorway to other worlds? Arthur asked, trying to wrap his head around everything. Exactly, the other Arthur said, relieved that Arthur seemed to understand. It's supposed to take me anywhere in the multiverse. But... His voice trailed off. But what? Arthur prompted. The other Arthur sighed. But it's broken. I think the jump to your dimension messed it up. The screen keeps flickering, and I can't get a clear signal to go back home. I'm stuck here. He looked at Arthur with pleading eyes. And I don't know how to fix it. A broken portal watch. Arthur repeated, running a hand through his hair. This was all so unbelievable. Well, maybe we can fix it. I'm pretty good with electronics. I helped Ben fix his remote control car last week. The other Arthur's face lit up. Really? You think you can help? Arthur nodded, a newfound determination in his eyes. We have to try. I mean, I can't just let you stay here forever. My parents would freak out if they found out I had a dimension-traveling twin sleeping in my bed. He grinned. Besides, it sounds like a pretty cool project. Okay, first things first, Arthur said, jumping out of bed. Let's take a look at this thing. He reached for the watch, and the other Arthur carefully took it off his wrist and handed it over. Arthur examined it closely. The screen was indeed flickering, displaying a jumble of strange symbols and distorted images. He pressed a few buttons, but nothing seemed to happen. Do you have any instructions or a manual? He asked. The other Arthur shook his head. Nope. I just kind of figured it out as I went along. But I think the main power source is busted. It needs a new, something. He shrugged helplessly. I don't know what it needs. Well, let's find out. Arthur declared, heading towards his closet. I have a science kit in here. Maybe we can find something that will work. He rummaged through the box, pulling out wires, batteries, and a small screwdriver. The other Arthur watched with anticipation. Do you think it will work? I don't know, Arthur admitted, but we have to try. It's either this, or you're stuck eating my mom's meatloaf forever. He shuddered dramatically. And trust me, you don't want that. The other Arthur chuckled, a small spark of hope flickering in his eyes. They were in this together. For the next hour, the two Arthurs worked side by side, carefully taking the watch apart. Arthur used his knowledge of circuits and wires, while the other Arthur, surprisingly, knew a lot about the watch's internal mechanisms. Turns out, in his dimension, he had taken apart a similar device before, even though he hadn't fixed it. They combined their knowledge, connecting wires, testing batteries, and carefully studying the strange symbols on the watch's circuit board. It was like working on a puzzle, except the puzzle could send someone to another dimension. Slowly, they started to make progress. The flickering on the screen started to stabilize, and the distorted images became a little clearer. I think I got it. Arthur exclaimed, holding up a small battery connected to a few wires. I'm not sure how long it will last, but it should give you enough power to make one jump. The other Arthur's eyes widened. Really? You mean I can go home? He reached for the watch, his hands trembling slightly. It's a temporary fix, Arthur cautioned. But it's worth a shot, right? He helped the other Arthur attach the battery to the watch. The screen flickered one last time, then stabilized, displaying a clear image of a swirling vortex. Looks like it's ready, Arthur said, a bittersweet feeling in his chest. The other Arthur looked around the room, a mix of sadness and gratitude in his eyes. Thank you, he said, extending his hand. You really helped me out. I don't know what I would have done without you. Arthur shook his hand, a genuine smile on his face. No problem. It was an experience. I'll definitely have a good story to tell Ben. He paused. But maybe I won't tell him everything. The other Arthur nodded. Probably a good idea. Some things are better left a secret. He took a deep breath. Well, I guess this is it. He paused, a serious expression on his face. One more thing, he said. Be careful. If you ever meet someone who looks exactly like you, don't trust them right away. Not everyone from other dimensions is friendly. He squeezed Arthur's hand tighter. Promise me you'll be careful. Arthur, a little unnerved by the sudden seriousness, nodded. "I promise," he said. "I'll be careful." The other Arthur smiled, a hint of his previous cheerfulness returning. "Good. Now, wish me luck." He pressed a button on the watch. There was a blinding flash of light, so bright that Arthur had to shield his eyes. When he could see again, the other Arthur was gone. The bed was empty, the air still crackling with energy. The only sign that he had ever been there was the faint smell of ozone and the lingering image of that futuristic city in Arthur's mind. He was alone again. In his ordinary, blue bedroom. Or so it seemed. Arthur sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the empty space where the other Arthur had been. Had it all been a dream? A very strange, very vivid dream. He shook his head, trying to clear his thoughts. It seemed impossible that it had actually happened. He looked around the room, searching for something, anything, that would prove it was real. His eyes landed on his science kit, still open on the floor. The wires and screwdrivers were scattered around, just as they had left them. But that wasn't enough. He needed something more concrete. He reached into the science kit, sifting through the wires and tools. And then he felt it. A small, smooth object, unlike anything he had ever seen before. It was a battery, but not like the ones he used in his remote control car. This one was silver and sleek, with strange symbols etched onto its surface. It hummed faintly with a low, almost imperceptible energy. Arthur stared at it in disbelief. It was real. The other Arthur, the watch, the dimension hopping, it had all been real. He held the battery tightly in his hand, a wave of excitement washing over him. Arthur realized that his life wasn't so ordinary after all. Even in his small, blue house, even in his predictable routine, extraordinary things could happen. The world was full of possibilities, of hidden dimensions and amazing adventures, just waiting to be discovered. He just had to be open to them. He thought about the other Arthur's warning. He would be careful. He would be aware. And maybe, just maybe, he would even start paying a little more attention in science class. After all, you never knew when you might need to fix a dimension-hopping watch. He carefully placed the strange battery in a small, locked box, a treasure to be protected. It was a reminder that anything was possible, that even a normal kid like him could have an adventure beyond his wildest dreams. He wondered if he would ever see the other Arthur again. Would he ever visit that futuristic city? Would he ever need to use his newfound knowledge to fix another dimension-hopping device? Only time would tell. He knew one thing for sure, his life would never be quite the same. Arthur went downstairs for breakfast, the smell of toast and bacon filling the air. His mom smiled at him. "Sleep well, sweetie?" she asked. "The best sleep ever," Arthur replied, a genuine smile spreading across his face. He looked out the window at the big, green yard, at the blue sky, at the birds chirping in the trees. Everything seemed brighter, more vibrant. He knew that even on an ordinary day, anything was possible. He couldn't wait to see what adventure awaited him next. The world was no longer just a safe, familiar place. It was a place of wonder. And Arthur was ready to explore it.